Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Talking Elite Fitness in the year of our Lord 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for being with us. I'm Sean Woodland, being joined in this wonderful new year by Lauren Khalil. Lauren, how are you?
Happy New Year 2025.
Happy New Year to you.
Can't believe it.
I know. We were sitting here talking about how long ago January 2024 seems right now.
So long ago.
And also featuring Tommy Marquez.
What's up?
How you doing?
Great. Just looking to get my fitness back in, and after a laden a lot of beef and treets.
Beef and treats. All right.
Yeah, I sound like a dog. That's like what it takes.
Yeah, you do.
Nothing wrong with that. Beef and
Yeah.
treats. Well, I hope everybody had a great holiday season. It's technically like still kind of going on. It's really till like tomorrow, I think. I saw a great it was like one of those great tweets. It just said, "Oh no, people are starting to circle back." You know, it's all these 2 weeks, the 2 weeks of whatever, like whatever you get Christmas and then New Year's and then that whatever until that next like official work week starts, nothing happens.
People go off the grid.
Oh,
Like,
it's
will not answer you.
Nope. I mean, it's insane how just people want nothing to do with anything that resembles any sort of engaging in responsible activity. It's just, yeah. Why don't we circle back after when January starts? Roger that. Well, we are here because we're gonna, do a look back on 2024. We talked about what that was going to look like, and we're just honestly, we just said let's just do a year in review and talk about some highs, talk about some lows, talk about the good, the bad, and then at the end of the show, we'll kind of give our PR and no rep for 2024. And we got a couple of headlines we're going to talk about. But before we do that, we do want to thank our sponsor for today, and that is Thirdzy and their Rest and Recovery Collagen. You want to get on board the Thirdzy train if you want to improve your sleep and recovery. And right now, you can go to thirdzy.com/TEF and save 20% on their Rest and Recovery Collagen. That is like the perfect nightcap if you're someone who's looking to fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling much better. It has magnesium, GABA, L-theanine, ingredients that are in there to help calm your central nervous system so you don't toss and turn and take as long to fall asleep as someone like me usually does. You're going to wake up feeling good. You're going to stay asleep longer, and you're going to get more out of the sleep that you do get. Now Tommy has joined the dad train. You understand that sleep is a premium, and sometimes you don't get as much as you need, but Thirdzy will help you maximize the sleep that you get. So thirdzy.com/TEF, save 20%. Love their stuff. We've been talking about it for a while, and I just will never run out of good things to say about it because they're quality human beings who make a really great product. And if you're looking to up your sleep game and your recovery, can't recommend them highly enough. Also want to thank First Form. If you guys go to firstform.com, that's 1stphorm.com/TEF. Shop everything there that they got, all the supplements. I know you guys are big fans of the meat sticks. Their bars are fantastic. Got great protein. If you're looking for supplements, First Form, 1stphorm.com/TEF. And yeah, we get a little kickback from them, and we're glad
the show.
Supports the show. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump into it because there's a lot to talk about since we are going to recap the entirety of a year. First thing we want to do is because it's the holidays, we had multiple people get engaged. Catherine Davis' daughter, congratulations to her and Brooks Lake. Kelsey Keel's engaged, and Colton Mertens is engaged.
Oh yeah,
those three. Congrats!
Yeah,
Iron Hog.
The Iron Hog. That's a nickname that's going to stick.
Yeah,
it's never going anywhere.
That's just a great. God bless Seth Rollins for coming up with that. Yeah, and so then the other headline, we'll talk about that here in a second because it actually dovetails nicely off of something that we are going to talk about. So let's set the Wayback Machine for January 2024, and as we always do, we kind of kick off the competitive season, or the season sort of begins with Wodapalooza. And so we had Wodapalooza in January last year. Really good competition. Ricky Garrard won for the men, and Emma Cary won for the women. And that kind of plays into our next headline because she just announced recently on Instagram. I think I'll call the post up here if you're watching this. She's done with competition.
Yeah. She made it official as kind of a
Mhm.
year-end, like, reflection, um, and interestingly enough, it starts with all these, like, beautiful highlight
Yeah,
photos from competition, and I think probably there were some people, probably just the casual fan, that thought this might be a, "Hey, like, come
Come
back
back.
recharged
mhm,
and refreshed for next year,"
yeah,
and instead it transformed into something I think much more beautiful and more, um exciting for her, I think long
mhm,
term, is in that she like doesn't feel the need to come back to competition, that she's found fulfillment outside of the CrossFit space, and in the process has found herself a little bit more, which is kind of cool.
yeah,
She's pursuing a nursing degree. She's at nursing school. She's found a great deal of fulfillment and passion in supporting and helping others, which is fantastic.
mhm,
And yeah, and as a result, like, her cup is full, and whereas she felt like the only thing that could fill her cup was winning, and if she was chasing that, like, fleeting feeling, she has something that's a little bit more long lasting. So good for her. She's a awesome, awesome young woman, and I've
mhm,
always enjoyed talking with her. I've always enjoyed catching up with her family, and even when CrossFit was her sole focus, I was blown away by her maturity in terms of critical self evaluation in a way that is conducive to improving you towards your goals,
mhm,
and I think that even reared its head in a way that was unexpected in helping her reevaluate her life in general, her at such a young age, and it set her on a path, hopefully, to be happier long term, and in a way that um, she doesn't necessarily need that constant self evaluation because her cup's full for a
yeah,
larger period of time.
Oh, she would always blow me away with how well spoken she was, and just the way that at such a young age, she can sit there, think about the question, evaluate the question, and then answer with such ease and confidence was just that always I admired a
mhm,
ton out of her, and her family, we got to know them at Wodapalooza, were so great, but just having the ability to leave something that she was so passionate about and loved so much on her own terms, and seeing you slide through those pictures and the genuine smile on her face, I think is great to see, and, I wouldn't be surprised if there's other athletes that might feel that way, but just have been torn and aren't able to lean in fully the way that she did, so, I mean, I applaud her for really following what her gut
yeah.
where her gut has led her.
I mean,
I think
I know I wasn't capable of this at 19, 20.
hell no.
You know,
I don't know that I'm capable of this now.
I could barely decide how I wanted to spend my 12.99. Was it a 30 rack of Keystone or
Yeah,
Natural Light? Like, where are we going? That was the
mhm.
only critical evaluation I was doing at that
I
age.
I think what's the most interesting to me about this is, and she mentions it in that post, if you wanna go read it on her Instagram account, is that she'd been chasing that victory. She got it, and it was like, "Oh, this isn't all it's cracked up to be. Yeah, I don't need this anymore." I mean, usually you find that with athletes, it's the opposite. "Hey, I got the win. It just recharged,
Mhm.
it reignited the fire in me, and it had the opposite effect on her." I respect the hell out of anybody who makes a decision and then says, "Here's what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody else thinks. It's the best thing for me." And good for her. I hope
And
she's
what a way
happy.
to go out
Yeah, and it was
after winning
absolute
Wodapalooza.
pleasure always watching her compete, talking to her, being able to cover, wish her the best of luck. But
Mhm.
we get through Wodapalooza. That was relatively, I want to say relatively uneventful. I've not because it was fun. It as it always is. It's a great in-person event. Good way to start the year. And then we get to the open. And open registration increases, but I think it was what, 5, 6% in there, which for any business, that's you grow 6%. That's great. Great metric. But I think maybe uh under delivered a bit for I think what the powers that be would have hoped registration would have looked like for the open.
Mhm.
And I was trying to think if I could, obviously the Lazar Djukic tragedy, putting that aside, because that has such a huge has put such a huge like just cloud on the whole year, right? I mean that it's hard to talk about anything without immediately kind of going to that. But if I had to sort of pick one word to sort of describe the feeling I got throughout the competitive year going into the games, it was a miss, or a phrase would be out of whack. And it started with the open. And the way
Mhm.
that those, for me, the way that those announcements went, and the whole golden barbell thing that just was ill-fated, I think, from the beginning. Um, and I remember that first announcement being there. It just didn't seem the same.
Where
Yeah,
was the first open announcement?
It was outside of the Bay Area. Was it San
it
Ramon?
yeah, it was like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it was East Bay area.
Yeah.
I went there and spectated,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and to watch you guys and do your thing and support you, and, the best way I can put it, and I'm right there with you, is it's I don't wanna lean too hard into cliche, but, like, like, there's a point in time when, like, your, like, weekend routine with your friends and stuff like that just needs kinda just doesn't hit the same like,
Mhm.
the like, going out to the same bars and all that stuff. You're like, "Yeah," I'm like, kinda this doesn't quite have the same zip that it did. Or, it's just it kept wanting it to be better than it was.
Mhm.
Maybe the better analogy is like you go back to something you loved as a kid, like whether it was a restaurant or something, if you moved and you're like, "Oh yeah, this really wasn't that good. I just loved it because I was
Aw.
12."
Yeah.
Right? Like, damn, actually, like Chuck E. Cheese is kind of creepy.
Oh,
and
no.
and um no, but and you're right. It started with the golden barbell. I was excited to obviously watch you guys do your thing. And the second workout of the golden barbell, first off, the way they executed the first one was just a huge miss. And once that word got round about that, I was like, that's just a kind of
Mhm.
a scenario. And then the heavy lift that they had to do, immediately all the athletes are like, yeah, we're not going for this. And they start doing it, you're like, yeah, this
Mhm.
didn't work out. This
Yeah.
was and I want to separate that feeling from other, because I didn't get that feeling all the way through. I got it from the elements where I felt like the baton was in CrossFit's hand to kind of recreate that magic. And I say that because in subsequent weeks, I was down at a different affiliate every week,
Mhm.
experiencing their Friday night lights and those events, and those still had the zip to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like the
This was the first year that I actually did a Friday Night Lights, and I loved it. It was a
Mhm.
blast.
Yeah, and it felt like there was a disconnect between the magic I was feeling inside the affiliates and the gyms and the people that of the community that were taking it on a personal level and a local level. The disconnect between that and what was being executed at the high end from CrossFit and their decision makers. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
I will say outside of like, if we can get through those open announcements through the golden barbell, because, yeah, to me, the golden barbell was definitely a miss. I think that the matchups and the actual open announcements themselves, if you can, like, fast forward to the end, I think those were done very well, and I think those
Mhm.
brought a lot of hype and excitement and fanfare with the athletes.
Yeah, and
I
I
thought
thought the
the
fact that
matchups were good. Yeah,
yeah, they had Seth Rollins involved, like, that was a cool thing, and
I
they got
thought that was a win. Yeah.
that was
I thought
fantastic.
that was a
Like,
win.
that's like, more of that. I think the biggest thing that has always sort of I've never understood, and Tommy, I think you probably remember this from having been in some of these conversations when we were there and then when we were still, heavily involved with the production, is that they were always looking to reinvent it. It's gotta be different. We gotta make it different. It's gotta be why? Why? It's great every year. Why does it have to be different? Why can't it like what's wrong with what's wrong with going to the affiliate, showing all the people go crazy, introducing the two athletes and having a workout? Like, why does it have to be different?
Yeah.
And
That
and look, there
yeah.
were some ideas. There was one idea that was pitched, and I was like, that would have been awesome. That was really different that I think the community would have loved. And it was like, no, that's too different. Can't do that. And then so now we get, golden barbell. We get and look, I like the idea that they try to engage the community. They try to give like awards and things like that. I just thought, and I remember being on site there for that first one, and we would look at people who were involved behind the scenes of the production, like I don't want to name names, but we were like, hey, this isn't going to work. We got to do this differently. And there was some like you would at any sort of production meeting. Hey, what if we tried it like this? There was definitely some gentle pushback or some suggestions that happened on some things that people seemed reluctant to change. Um, so that's my biggest question. Like, why do we need to change that? What's
Yeah. It's and I don't necessarily think it's like it changes a good or bad thing, or like I think I think it speaks to a bigger issue. It's the inability to know when you have a winning formula,
Mhm.
and leaning into that, and knowing when the formula and whatever you're doing isn't working, and then using that as a catalyst to create change. And it seems like it's always back. I like, and this has gone back, multiple years now, where it feels like, oh, you have something, why are you changing that?
Yeah.
Why does that need to change? Okay, then oh, this clearly isn't working, and that's what you decide to keep around. It's like opposite day, and it doesn't feel like they're leveraging the need to be creative and change when it's invited and when it's most beneficial, and instead, like, kind of haphazardly, like, throwing it around as a proxy for trying to be creative, right?
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I'm being creative just because I'm changing something. I got to get my
That's
hands
what this
involved.
felt like.
It becomes meddling. That's what it becomes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Would
Lauren, you
your opinions have would your opinions have changed if the golden barbell was strictly just for the community? That a community member won the golden barbell, or there was like a matchup
yeah,
between people
yes.
inside the affiliate?
Uh,
I have no problem with them trying to give some sort of
yeah,
award, a weekly award to an affiliate member or a member of the community who best embodies that week's thing. Like, I thought
agreed.
that was fine. It was the
Yeah,
competition amongst the athletes, especially week 1, that just fell flat. Like, it doesn't need to be that. And to get back to my original point, like, why do we need to change it? What's wrong with just watching 2 elite athletes throw down head to head?
yeah,
No,
Like,
that's what
yeah.
people pay a lot of money to see.
they wanna see the workout, they wanna know what the workout is, and then I know viewership dips a little bit, and then you have the matchup, but there's no way around that. Like, there just isn't.
And
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 so
we said this at the time, like, we don't have a problem with the Golden Barbell being a community,
mhm,
award, just like Lauren proposed right there. But it has to be well thought out in how you present it and how you award it. And then maybe sprinkle a little magic in on the back end of, like, hey, where's the cool incentive, right? Like, maybe you invite 3 athletes instead of 4, and the Golden Barbell winner gets announced. They get to hop right in with the Golden Barbell and do the workout that week. Like,
Mm, cool. Yeah.
like, it's not that hard.
well, that's what I'm
To
saying. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I never thought the
Yeah,
open announcements were broke. I
I
love
neither did
when
I.
they like, when they added, I thought it was cool when they added the community members throwing down. I like, maybe as the undercard, fine with that too. Like, we get to watch, that's okay. It extends the broadcast a little bit, more opportunities for sponsorship because you have a longer show,
Mhm.
highlights the community, highlights the affiliate. Love that. Love the fact that they got a guy like Seth Rollins involved. More of that, please. More bringing in celebrities to sort of amp things up a little bit. Totally fine with all that, but
Mhm.
it's this desire to, like, no, we got to do something different. Not really. No, you don't. People like this. It works.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And also, I don't even know if they're doing them this year.
Yeah, it's hard to say. They might. We could see it changed again,
Mhm.
and that's like, I don't want this to be the lasting impact, because I know, Lauren, you went to New York and had an awesome Friday
Mhm.
Night Lights experience there.
Oh
I
my
went
god, it
down
was so much
to
fun.
I went down to Venice and had
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
LA, and had an awesome Friday Night Lights experience with Rad and Kelsey Keel, and that was one of my favorite workouts ever in the open, because it was like a groove pitch for me.
Mhm.
And then on week 3, went and had an amazing. This is the reason I'm wearing this shirt. It's a
Yeah.
Motion CrossFit, Motion Fitness, CrossFit Surbiton Friday Night Lights in England, and they had an awesome, like, setup there. They had a grilled cheese truck. I ate my body weight in fried cheese, and tried to do some thrusters and bar muscle ups, and had a blast. And those elements, those touch points are still alive and well and doing
Mhm.
amazing. So it's like, all right, that's obviously doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Like, there are gyms that are taking this baton and running with it. So those deserve to be celebrated for sure.
Friday Night Lights will always be special.
Yeah, no
Like,
question.
with the right vibes and the energy, I love it.
Yeah,
It's my
Mhm.
favorite part of the year in a lot of ways.
yeah, whether you do the open or not, and you're a member of an affiliate, just go
Mhm.
to Friday Night Lights to support it. You're gonna have a good time. It's every place is unique. I had a great time at my affiliate. It was awesome. Okay, so now we go to the quarterfinals, and we've let more people in now, which I thought was cool. Gave more people an opportunity to compete. They let in 25% of the field, so it was a quarter of the field in the quarterfinals. And the thing that stands out to me about quarterfinals was the great step up debacle and how many people got dinged for that movement. And it seems
Mhm.
like every year in these online competitions, there's always one thing that stands out as to maybe that wasn't the best idea. And I understand, like, talking to people on both sides of this about how if you if you just read the standards, I get it. So I'm sympathetic to that. But at the same time, there were people immediately pointed out, well, we'll just do a step over. Then that's a binary thing. Did you make it or did you not? There's none of
Yeah.
that. You stand. So that I thought what was cool is that they let more people in, and it was more of an opportunity for people to compete and further their season. But at the same time, then you had that, and it cost a lot. Like Paige Powers comes to mind. She didn't get to go to semifinals because of that workout, and I think there's no world where I don't think Paige Powers at least deserves at least to go to the semifinals.
Mhm. No doubt, and
I
and
think
go ahead.
It it's unfortunate because I think that there was for the affiliates, it was a major win taking that many more people to quarterfinals because with that programming, affiliates could program the workouts in class. If you didn't make it to quarterfinals, you can absolutely scale, but if you did make it to quarterfinals, which was such a good amount of people in each class, you were able to do it in a class setting. You didn't need to find open gym time and do all of this tape measuring and filming and whatever if you're not going to make it any further. So for an affiliate, I think it was great, but for the sport as a professional sport, not so great because the
Well,
box step up is all we remember.
and
Mhm.
and again, the box step up is something that's just been indicative of the thorn in quarterfinals side since its advent, right? Is an inability. So if you're going to put in movements that are difficult to judge or that have a significant gray area, you need to be able to properly administer the test from a judging and penalty and appeals, a timeline standpoint.
Mhm.
And whether it's been V ups or box like dumbbell box step ups or some people getting or the shuttle runs, there's
Mm,
always been something that has it's almost like water finds its level, or you always like water always finds where the leak is.
Mhm.
Those quarterfinals has always found, like, their programming has always found a way to basically highlight the fact that they don't have enough resources for the judging and to regulate the season properly in those elements. And it sucks because, like, people's people who are trying to chase the sport as a livelihood and people whose years depend on these workouts and getting through and building this momentum for themselves are cut short. And you can't say that everyone got a fair shake, and that's a shame.
Well, and remember, and we talked about this a year ago going into quarterfinals about how they were going to spot check one video. So,
yeah.
and that's the one they
The
chose.
flawed system to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now this year, we're getting more online. We're going to have semifinals online in the affiliate. Now, granted, there will be, in-person opportunities as well, but that is going to exist. But that's a discussion for a later day. But yeah, as Tommy said, like
Mhm.
the one, and Lauren, you said too, like the one thing I remember is just the step up thing. I mean, I had a couple friends who competed in semifinals, or sorry, quarterfinals at the affiliate, and it was they really enjoyed it. They got there, they get to the gym early, and they'd set up and
Yeah.
we cheer them. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So again, there was like positive stuff in there, but it got derailed. So we move from quarterfinals and we go then to semifinals. And this was another thing where it just the theme that I talked about at the beginning of just things just being a miss kind of continued, and it was by virtue of the fact that for the first time since we've had quote unquote broadcasts of live in person semifinal events, full days weren't covered, and unfortunately, that
Mm.
was and what's an harbinger of things to come.
Yeah.
And there was some, like, I love the idea. I like the fact that they went back to the StubHub Center. Lauren, you got to be there. Like, that is still, to me, my favorite CrossFit Games venue. But for whatever reason, it just didn't land right. That, like,
Mhm.
the thing that people remember most about that. I mean, we had the great performance from Colton Mertens, and in the snatch event, like, all that stuff was awesome. There were some really, really cool events. But the thing that everyone kept talking about was the lack of attendance. Like,
Mhm.
that was the biggest, unfortunately, the biggest subject.
Yeah.
So,
And it over like listen, and there's other it kind of continued this theme. I'll say this right now. If anyone's listening, like, man, this feels negative. I hate that this feel
yeah,
that there's this much negativity around the sport because I can tell you as much as anybody in the last decade, I have been since 2011. I have been as positive about the sport as anyone,
yeah,
and it just sucks that, like, if we're being honest in this critical evaluation, there are these things that get overlooked and it feels less cohesive. And maybe these issues have always existed, maybe not. But, like, for one, Lauren getting to do a bunch of play-by-play calling.
it's great.
Like how like she was the first female play-by-play commentator for an open announcement and for live CrossFit competition. Like,
Yeah,
that's
which we have
awesome.
needed for a long time.
Long time, which is great.
I mean,
And
look,
and
you
it's
remember this when we would talk about that at meetings, like, hey, we got to find
yeah.
women who can do this, and we just couldn't find anybody. I mean, we could find people who wanted to do it, but they were not,
Yeah, it was tough.
right.
But
So anyway,
yeah. And so, like, those are little pieces that were like, man, those would be like awesome cherry on top of like this beautiful Sunday that is semifinals, right?
right.
And while the competition on the floor was always still great, the battle between Adler and Roman and Hopper and all those guys in the East, you had some amazing individual performances, whether it was Olivia Kerstetter just crushing the snatch ladder
Yes.
event.
Oh my
Um,
god,
There were
so
so many
awesome.
great. This I
eh,
love the semifinals. Like, that's probably my.
The cut lines make it
Yeah.
so
There was a
interesting.
ton of drama all over the place. It was great.
So much drama.
There, but
like,
again,
oh,
it was all that stuff got overshadowed, or not overshadowed, but it didn't get the shine it deserved because of the fact that we didn't get to watch every day of competition.
yeah,
Or we did, but it was quote unquote podcast coverage.
Well, and then even with the podcast coverage, I feel like there was one week where the camera was facing or the athletes were facing their backs to the
yeah,
camera. Do you
yeah,
remember that?
Yeah.
for the snatching and
Yeah,
some of the lifting events for the team.
that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is like it's tough, right? Like you miss some really cool moments, and there really were some cool moments, like the good, bad, and everything in between. Like Haley Adams returning to competition and finishing second in the
Mm.
first workout back,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
it was her and Tia, and like the crowd was behind her, like that was awesome. Like the
And
is
Amy
is
Kringle going for broke on the first event
The
against
Europe
was
event
yeah,
was
Gabby? Yeah.
awesome.
yeah,
Oh,
Europe was
Europe event
Europe
was
was
fantastic.
so
fantastic.
lit.
It was
and and
great.
And, to have the triumph, you
Australia?
gotta
Yeah.
have yeah, you gotta have the sad stories, right? Like, Annika missing out
Oh,
again, like, those
Mhm.
yeah.
are like, that's what makes you appreciate the big
Mhm.
moments, and, there were quite a few in semifinals across Europe, North America, Oceania, like, yeah, it's tough, right?
Mhm.
Like Lazar winning Europe again and doing so in like pretty impressive fashion, finishing everything inside the top 10 and then seeing someone who I think looks up to Lazar in Yella and how he crafted his game a little bit, finishing right behind him in second. Like
Yep.
there were some great storylines coming
Victor
out of
Hoffer, like, his
yep.
moments, there was
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, those
The
are
char- the charge that Callum Clements made on the
yeah.
back half
Oh my
of the
god.
weekend. Yeah.
Austin Hatfield.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
they were fantastic moments in the semifinals. Like, overall, I think it was a good, it was a not good. It was great. It was a great part of the season. I think more or less was without any sort of major controversy. There was the injury thing that happened in Europe that, and the name of the athlete is
The
escaping me
rope
here.
climb. Oh, yeah.
Rebecca Biddison.
That's it.
Yes,
Yeah,
good
that
call.
was the big
Yeah.
one. Um, but from at least like a judging or competition standpoint, things like that.
Yeah.
I thought overall things went off really well. They were fun to watch. There were some really good moments, but there's always that but, and it was that lack of coverage on a Friday for the domestic ones. And was it Europe too I think Europe had podcast coverage as well.
They did have podcasts as well. All
Australia
the
was
ones
the
that were
only
run
one.
by CrossFit did, but
Australia
Torian
did.
Pro,
Yeah.
yep,
Mhm.
had all coverage.
And you
Well, and
just to some the one last thing I want to say about this, and to me, who I'm looking like, where is this now going? I'm like, that's not a good sign.
mm-mm.
No.
Yeah. Like if you're trying to pitch this to, someone to pick this up on the media side and you're like, yeah, the first day is iPhones and podcast equipment, then you're like,
Yeah.
that's tough. That's how you, because I remember, and this was back when we had like our TV boot camps and stuff like that. They were like, hey, you always want to come on the air strong. Like you want
Mhm.
the first impression and the run up, that first run up to be great, and you always want to finish on a high too. And then
Mhm.
work on as a whole getting better each day. And I felt like semifinals each week didn't come on the air the best way possible because of the seesaw coverage.
Mhm.
So, which
Yeah.
is tough.
All right. Well,
But
then now we move on to the games. And obviously, this is where the entire season, the entire year, everything changes.
I have a
Uh,
question on that.
yeah.
So, and because I there is a very clear dividing line, right, on
Mhm.
where the entire calendar year changed. Coming into the games,
Mhm.
where we'll call it for 4th of July. How would you, out of scale out of 10, how would you have rated the season so far? Like what, kind of just transporting back to that moment. Sean Woodland's having himself a blue Hawaiian on 4th of July while while
Oh, man.
Wet, white,
while
blue
Matt
line. Thank you very much.
while
Hashtag
while
freedom.
Max duct tapes Roman candles to each one of his
Yeah.
fingers.
Aw.
um, honestly, let me look. I would have said probably a 6 or a 7. I mean, I that feels about right to me. I think that,
Was that a 5-5 for me?
yeah,
Like,
that's yes. I thought there were a lot of, like we were just talking about, a lot of really good moments, a lot of things that had these happened in, the what I think are the golden years of 2013 to 2018,
mhm,
that would have been all we were talking about. But there were just unfortunately too many things that you could pivot to. You say, "Hey, that's great, yeah, but hey, that's great, yeah, but," and there were too many yeah buts for me to really say, um, rank it higher than that. But there was optimism going into the games. New venue, kind of fresh start.
yeah,
Finally going to get in person, back on ESPN. Like there was a lot of good stuff that was out there.
for sure. Yeah,
What about you, Lauren?
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Mm.
Because I want to hear yours, Lauren, because I do think you had a little bit different personal
Mhm.
experience, right? Because you got to step into the announcer's booth a few times and got to do some stuff that I know you had been really working towards.
And that's what makes it more challenging for me because professionally, it gave me a lot of opportunities last year. So
Hmm.
I would rate it probably a 7, but also seeing up close and personal how some of those things didn't set me up for the best success. Like I think of, for example, how the first day we didn't do a broadcast, it was podcast. And podcasting and broadcasting are two very different skills. And having like Adrian as the host of the podcast then made it a little weird for both of us to switch those roles into the 2 next days. So it
Mm.
felt like it was a slower, uh, role to, like, get or a slower pace to get comfortable into both of our roles and figure out that commentator compatibility and chemistry.
Hmm.
So, that was disappointing for
Yeah,
that perspective.
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so games show up, and again, this was you want to talk about perspective. This is the first time since 2011 that I hadn't been there in person. Uh, so that was a weird perspective for me. And I was like committed to kind of being a fan, and Josh Bortle, Fluffy Duck, was going to be at my house, and we're gonna watch it and we have a good time. Uh, Obviously, we all know what happened, and that it is honestly I don't remember really anything about the games other than that. I mean, you couldn't. Chad, I remember that. But as if you asked me to name an event that happened, I don't think I could do it. I know I can't do it. Other than Chad, that's it. I could not specifically outline an event that happened there. Oh, the track, that,
Yeah.
but that's it.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, if I try to compartmentalize things a bit, which it's is not, I know, not the right way to do it, because ultimately we have to weigh everything against it. But I would say the first couple of days of being there, I think we're kind of, like, for me and Lauren especially, we're this kind of mad dash to like do all these things that
Yeah.
we were working with Tier, we were doing a live stream from their athlete check-in, and we're trying to
First few days were so
they
fun.
were
Yeah.
really fun. I mean, we were like sprinting constantly trying to do stuff with that. I mean, and then I think back to us sneaking onto the track to
Oh,
do.
I don't think we've ever told the story here.
Oh yeah.
You guys sneaked onto the track.
I mean,
I thought you were. I thought that was like all on the up and up. I didn't know that there were.
no,
Oh,
okay, so
yeah,
the
go
track
ahead,
was
Tommy.
open to the public. The track was open to the public during the day, right? Like,
Mhm.
like any track would be. And we had finished our tier check-in streams and everything like that. And we're getting ready for the next day, um and gearing up for the games. And we're talking, I think it was for Garmin, maybe.
It was for
Uh
Garmin.
I was like, it'd be really fun if we went down to the track, and just like pretty much cold, and maybe with like a mouthful of uh watermelon sour patch,
Yes, that
just
was
ran the
yep, we
mile.
we
Like,
slept at the
we've been
gas
working all
station.
day, we've been on our feet, we feel like garbage. We slept 3 hours last night. Let's do this. And she was like, okay, okay. And we get there and everything's locked up, and we walked around the
And it's
entire
getting dark.
complex. Yeah, and it's getting dark, and the sun's setting, getting dark. We walked around the entire complex, couldn't get a hold of anyone that was potentially inside, so it's empty, right? There's no one on the premises. And Lauren's like, "Oh, I guess we're not doing this." And I was like, "What?
What the hell
What do
we
you
are?
mean?"
Yeah,
I
so
was
I
like
Google, I was like, "What time does it open in the morning? Maybe we can do it before the day starts." And Tommy was like, "No, we're here. We are making this happen."
I was like, "You needed to be more of a gremlin when you were a kid, because I see a fence that's
Yeah,
ripe
that's. I was gonna
for
say
hopping."
that
Yeah.
you need a child
This
thinking
fence,
really fast.
Tommy, how tall do you think that was like a 20-foot fence?
It was at least 15 feet.
What?
It was a big
Yeah,
fence.
and I'm
That's like
five
30
foot
feet.
one.
Yeah, that's like 30 Lauren feet.
And it was the
Mhm.
long, like, vertical, like rebar,
Oh
so,
no.
like, there's not really good footing. But she was like, "I don't know how we're gonna get that." I'm like, "See those bolted signs? See that? See that? See that? We're gonna shimmy over here." And she was like, "How do you think you can get?" I'm like,
Trust me.
"Look at the last name, honey. I got you." And so I basically, like, propped her up and helped her, like, hop over, and she was like,
Yeah,
"Okay, now you." And I just, like, whoop, 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 like, got over there.
so
She's like
fast.
she was like, "Oh my god." And so, yeah, we go down, and we run it,
We're
we
like,
ran it.
"We need to
Yeah.
get in and
Alright.
out." So we truly did that run cold. I was like, "Okay, Tommy, 3, 2, 1,
Lauren was
go." I'm
Lauren was
recording.
like the goody two shoes girl that finally gets convinced to break the rules with, like, the kid that smokes cigarettes
Yeah.
and has a leather jacket and ditches class.
Having heart
Oh, it was
palpitations the whole time. I can't believe we did that.
Yeah.
Eh.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was me as we were leaving, and then I was so nervous that, like, one of us was gonna leave our IDs, and then we were gonna get our wristbands
Oh,
cut, and we were gonna get kicked out of the games, and then yeah,
come
I
on.
you should
spiraled, but then we
You
did it, and it
should
was so fun.
yeah, and with the minute we got over that fence the other side, like, Lauren was, like, on cloud 9. Like,
I was so
she was like,
giddy.
what a thrill.
Yeah.
Like, let's go break and enter somewhere. Let's go do it." Like, Jesus,
"Let's go rob a
Jesus.
bank
Well,
now."
that's not the first time in CrossFit history that someone has had to break into an establishment to, get something.
No,
So, Yeah.
that is true.
Yeah,
That
was
is
it
true. So
2013 open announcement, Brooklyn? They had to
yeah,
so yeah, there was this is a very quick aside. 2013 open announcement in Brooklyn. They needed to get Wi-Fi, and something happened with the way the I'm telling the story sort of not totally accurate, but the gist of it is the spirit of it is true.
Okay.
So they had to figure out how to get internet somehow, and there was a church above the gym, and so they wound up like breaking into the church in order to jimmy up the Wi-Fi, and yeah,
Oh my god.
that's
yeah.
how we had an open announcement. So there you go.
Sorry, Jeebus.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
time out. Pause. So, Sean, if you were there with Tommy and I, would you have broken in?
To run? Hell no. Um, I don't know. Maybe I probably would have found probably not a route that required me to climb 15 feet to do it, but I would have I'd have been
I
good.
I think we could have got Sean over the fence. I don't think he would
Oh,
have ran. I think he would have
uh,
been the designated camera guy for that.
yeah,
Okay.
probably.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
true.
But we
Okay.
surprised some people with the amount of time. So
Yeah, you guys did pretty well.
all that to say, like there was some fun like stuff
Sure.
that was happening around that weekend, and there was some excitement for everything and getting things
Yeah.
going, and then
And everything we heard
obviously
about the venue was great, and people were fired
Mhm.
up to have it in a new spot. Like you know what that can be when you bring the games to a new location with people who have never been able to go before. And first
Yeah,
time we went to Madison, how many people would come up and say, "This is my first time here. Thank you for being here. This is awesome. I never had a chance to go before." Uh, that it was there was a lot of excitement about it. And
yeah,
unfortunately, like what ensued is going to have and is having a lasting impact on just about everything CrossFit related for I don't for the foreseeable future. Yeah, I don't know when that cloud will ever be removed. If I don't know. Um, and it was horrible. Like I've only been through something like that in person one other time, and I talked about it after it happened. It was at the Daytona 500 in 2001 when Dale Earnhardt died.
hmm
Um, and the way that information started trickling out from Fort Worth reminded me a lot of that because it was the 2001 was before Twitter, before really the internet had exploded with the amount of information that you could get in a second, and it felt the same way. Just you know, I remember just sitting here in this seat, like trying to pay attention to everything that was going on, getting the text from you two, and just having this
yeah.
horrible, horrible feeling in my gut, like th- this is going to change things forever.
I remember sending that text to you because it was
Yeah,
I can't remember what we were discussing, but I was like, oh crap, Sean. I don't think Sean knows,
yeah.
and I was like
Yeah.
trying to think of a way to like craft a text to let you know that like they can't find him,
Because I was
and
cutting
it's
highlights of the event, because
yeah.
that's what I was back here doing that stuff because we were
Yeah.
gonna put it up on social. I had no clue, none. Um, yeah, so I don't, we've talked so much about that, but it is the one thing that is, if you ask people the one thing that they remember about the 2024 season, that has got to be 99% of the people you ask who had any sort of awareness of what was going on throughout the season. That's the one thing they're going to remember, and it's
And it should be.
yeah,
It should
no
be,
question.
like, we shouldn't let this just kinda fade off into
No.
the background, right? Like, for Lazar's memory and for what he meant to people in the sport and his family, like, don't like, this shouldn't you shouldn't just let this kind of be another footnote, you
Mhm.
know? And, the last thing you want to people like, one of the moments that you've kinda lost the plot on things is when you let yourself become numb to these types of things.
Yes.
Right? And you don't want that to be the case. You want to remember the feelings, the emotions, and you want to keep those at the front of mind when you and access them when you need to help actually incite change and make things better moving forward so it doesn't happen again.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
and
I know you and Tommy obviously had a much different experience and a much different perspective on that, having been there. And I just remember talking to the two of you throughout the week, and I know it affected you. I talked to people on the broadcast crew. I know it affected them. I've never heard people sound that I've known for a decade sound like that at all, or just act like that. And at what point did you feel like you were maybe kind of getting back to normal?
Oh god.
There were snippets throughout the weekend
Not
where
even
it was
I'm
like,
just talking about you felt like, okay, this isn't having the crippling, I don't know if that's the right word, but just the crippling effect on you of just being empty.
yeah, it was definitely after I got home. Um, like, I mean, it's no surprise if you listen to this show, like, we had a kid this year, so like coming home to my wife, uh, i- the way I envision the year playing out in my mind, at least for the games, is going and like really knuckling down for the games as always,
Mhm.
having like this celebration and this grand finale to the season, despite what I thought the shortcomings might have been, and being able to celebrate the athletes and celebrate that weekend. It's one of the like we don't get to see everyone in person all the time, so like getting to spend time with Lauren and working and seeing Mars and Heber and Julian and the morning chalk up crew and everyone down in the pit and like getting to see a lot of those people and then coming home and like really really like focusing on my family
Mm.
and like it was a huge shift for me to suddenly like think about someone had just lost a son, and then I'm going home to my wife and I'm trying to like build up the strength or just whatever you want to call it to be able to come back home and start to celebrate the forthcoming birth of our son.
Yeah.
Like we had a baby shower and all these things that we're trying to get done, and it just painted everything in a different light suddenly. And I think it was a few weeks. I will say the first time I think it probably wasn't lingering in the back of my mind, and it was like I can fully be present and like I don't know, like not it wasn't really there, was I would say the baby shower.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that was maybe a month afterwards.
Yeah.
Uh because it's hard, right? Like we work in this space, like this is for the last 15, 16 years, this has been my livelihood, my sole livelihood.
Mhm.
And so when I talk to people and we talk about things that are a part of my life, my livelihood is one of them. We talk about this.
Yeah.
I go to the gym, we
Mhm.
talk about this. I have friends from the gym. I have friends that know that aren't from the gym that know that this is a big part of my life. We talk about this. And so when something like this comes up and someone outside of the community goes, "Oh my God, look at this tragedy. Who do I know within this community?" If one of those people is someone I've come across, I'm their reference point for that,
Mhm.
right? So you're constantly going through it. I think it does help you process in some regard, but it definitely took a while. It was at least a month before I was finally like, oh, I can actually start to look forward a little bit. So,
What about you, Lauren?
Yeah, it was about a month because I felt the need to keep going to the gym to stay into a routine, but every time I went to the gym, it was somebody new asking about what happened, asking for details, similar to you. And I mean, I just came back from the games. Then there were some people who weren't as clued in, like knew something happened, but didn't know all of the details. So then it was just it was just strange because it was almost like reliving Groundhog's Day, and then I remember even going on my family vacation and just being so paranoid about my four-year-old nephew around water. Like, for whatever reason, because of,
mhm,
being there at the games, having him around water made me really uneasy, and it was like, on my family vacation, something that I normally look so forward to going, I felt like I couldn't really be at ease. It just gave me a lot of stress and anxiety, so it took some time to get back to what I would call a normal routine and feel safe
Yeah.
again, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, I think so. This brings me to the next thing. I think the community sort of took a collective exhale or was able to sort of, I don't want to say put it in the rearview mirror because, like you said, Tommy, it's never going to be completely out of sight. It's always going to be something that people think about. But we're able to sort of like, okay, let's try to get back to some semblance of normalcy. Was Wodapalooza SoCal. And there, like that event, there was a lot of hype around it, rightfully so. I love the format. I loved some of the things they did with it. I thought it was really cool that way they had the different the different team events that they weren't always 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. They varied that up. They had the captains matchup. Like, that was a lot of fun. Now there were some technical things I think that they need to improve a little bit, and that's fine. Every
Mhm.
year that happens, but for the most part, I felt like that was an overall positive experience for the community and for the athletes to get back out there and compete in a setting that wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't like serious, because it was like, especially that was it Friday night or Saturday, the event where the world, it was the bar muscle up, I think the barbell and the bar muscle ups, and they had those head to head
Sprint.
races. Yeah.
Yep.
And the world team actually won it. And it was like, oh man, this is okay. This isn't going to be a runaway. This is like a legit comp. That was a lot of fun. Like, it was a really, really great competition and a great atmosphere for the athletes. I think the fans had fun. And that, to me, from just the perspective of the community and the sport, felt like a good way to kind of get people back into the flow of things. And overall,
Yeah.
I think it was a fun experience. I'm looking forward to seeing how they improve on it in 2025. And I think that was a big win. It was a win for
I
the community.
It was timed so perfectly where it gave the athletes just enough time to go home, be with their families, take some time for theirself, but then come back to competition where the stakes weren't as high. They could kind of feel the waters with
Mhm.
their other teammates and get to know these people as teammates where normally they're competitors. Or like, I spoke with some of the athletes and they're like, yeah, I normally don't communicate really with the men because I'm with the women isolated, and now I get to know these athletes on a different level. And I just think that it was so perfect for the community, for the athletes, and gave people something to root for again, which was cool.
Yeah.
And Pat
Yeah.
Vellner winning the Lazar Djukic award
Right.
was, I mean, wow.
It was a very fitting return to competition, I think, and in a way that was very cathartic. I mean, not just for the athletes, right? Like, a lot of the people being there, it was like, all right, well, we have to like tap into this competitive mindset of like covering a competition, but we're on the beach in Huntington Beach, like we're like for most of it, we're not wearing shoes. We're like barefoot in the sand,
Yeah.
running around with the camera, right? Like, in between, we're like in one of the most beautiful stretches of beaches in the world, and like Lauren and I are like throwing around free sunglasses to everybody, and like it's just it was like there were moments where it was like, okay, like this is lower stakes. I can
Mhm.
just enjoy myself, you know? Like the athletes feel like more relaxed, and you could sense it too when we were in the
Mm,
practice like in the practices for each team the day before and just chatting with them. Like part of it too is like like they only get to see people like a certain amount of times. Like Fikowski knew he was retiring, and he was sharing all of his information, and you saw other athletes like chewing that up. You saw other athletes like really like reevaluating and also kind of like reigniting some love for the sport and those. And then it also gave it, in my opinion, one of the most fun all out full send moments I've seen in
Yeah.
CrossFit competition with Dallin and Brent. And that was like that was definitely a passing of the torch
Yeah.
type moment. And two athletes that just like mano y mano, let's just like
Yeah.
like leave it all out on the
let's
floor. It was great.
dance.
Yeah.
I think, and we'll move on to the next thing, but I think, and I said it then, I'll say it again. I think that competition has the potential to have a huge impact on the way that team competitions are conducted moving forward. And I think it's a good thing because that format was a lot of fun. And I think
Mhm.
people really enjoyed it. And Fit Fest kind of does, it was another example of that sort of all-star format. Uh, I hope they expand it next year. I hope they have more than two teams. Uh, there's a lot of potential to this, and I think for year number one, and again, I think there's some things that they can fix and improve on, and they know that. But overall, great competition, a lot of fun, and really something the community needed. And I think that propelled us into what I think was the thing that saved the year for me, really, and that was the Rogue Invitational. Um, Being able to go to Europe, have a competition of that magnitude, to pair it with the strongman competition, it was, and I can still say this, like there is no recency bias here because I've really thought about it. It is one of the best competitions I've ever been a part of, top to bottom, every single aspect of it. The only negative feedback I heard from anybody about it was, I just wish there were more places to eat. And if that's the worst thing you're dealing with, You're
You're
great.
doing pretty good.
It was the venue
Yeah,
was perfect. The floor was awesome. The way they covered it from the broadcast, some of the bells and whistles that they added, I was like, that is like the lane assignment thing that they
that
did.
was amazing.
It was
I was like,
you know,
that's
the virtual thing that they had. It was just top shelf everything. The competition was fun. It was exciting when you had that. Tia wins the first four, then Laura comes that back and wins four, and then it comes
So
down.
good.
As far as the series between those two, the best of nine, it comes down to the decisive ninth event. Jeff Adler and the battle that he had for the top of the podium, and Jason Hopper having his moment, finally getting out of the seventh curse and getting up to like, everything was the vibe was great, and it really to me like reminded me personally because I think a lot of people were wondering like, is this ever going to feel the same again after everything that happened? It just reminded me that there's like when done right, when presented correctly, it's freaking awesome.
Mhm.
yeah,
And I watched the CBS show that they put together, that Todd Sansom and his crew put together. Shout out to Todd because they did a great job. The 2 1 hour shows. And I'm like, yeah, man, that reminded me of like how cool it was. So that is the biggest. This is a pre like spoiler effect, but that's going to be my PR for the year. Like Rogue, it was just everything that needed to happen happened, and it could not have come at a better time.
yeah, 100%. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed like staying up to it. It had a ton of great storylines. There were a ton
Mhm.
of like great intimate moments, like Brent and Guy going head to head in the duel,
Yeah.
and the little back and forth there. That was that. And this kind of goes back to Wodapalooza. That dynamic was between them was solidified being on the same world team at Wodapalooza,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so then we got to see it play out like, hey, I'm trying to learn from you, Guy. And then, okay, I'm going to put it in application and use it against you
Yeah.
Amazing.
in competition.
Yeah.
And then you get that jawing, right? And like,
Mhm.
Brent got his swan song, and it just felt like, yeah, you're like, I can't say it any better than you did. It was a much needed return. And I was just watching from home. And I'm happy to hear they're going
Mhm.
back to Aberdeen again.
Yes.
I
So
know,
for
and they
those
have
of
the
us who
dates
missed,
already. Let's go.
yep.
Yeah, it's gonna
So
be, it
Back to
was
Halloween weekend.
I know, right? That's a problem for me, but,
Mm.
you know. But, yeah, I love look, I thought that the strongman competition was a lot of fun. Like, what they did at the venue, and I gotta give, Lauren Smith a shout out for this, and I mentioned it back then, but she was in charge of that sort of in-person, on the big jumbotron entertainment that you see at baseball games, hockey games, football games, and that is a hard, hard thing to do. And she crushed
Lauren
it.
is awesome. She has
She's a
so many
pro.
diverse skills. She
Yeah,
is a true pro.
mhm,
She is incredible at what she does.
she's great,
Props
agreed.
to her.
and it showed. Everything was awesome, and so that you come out of that, and then really you had Dubai, and that is sort of the official kind of end of the year. But in between that was the acknowledgement that the investigation into Lazar's death was complete. Some changes were made or announced, and that really like that whole thing is now setting the stage for what is yet to come and what we're going to figure out now in 2025 as far as World Fitness Project, what athletes are or are not going to do when it comes to participating in the season, what other things might be springing up, what the future is for the PFAA. So there were a lot more questions than answers in that whole thing, and now here we are in 2025, just what a week or so away from Wodapalooza, and a
Hmm.
month, 2 months out of the start of the Worldwide Open.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And and
It's here.
and there's some great stuff coming down the pipe. Like I know we probably won't get to it today, and we'll save it for a future episode. But like the elite teams have been announced for Wodapalooza. The individuals have been announced. We have some awesome combinations. There's a combination that I never thought I would have seen that got announced in the daughters.
Yes,
Oh
And
my
dude, I
god.
can't wait to see that.
yeah, which is amazing, right? And so there's these pieces that are incoming that I think exist outside of the spectrum of the CrossFit Games season. So that leaves a lot of interesting potential pathways for the year,
Mhm.
and don't know where it's going to land, because if you had told me where we would be right now a year ago, I would have laughed and been like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah,
Like,
it's yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, things are going to be very interesting this year. And once again, we're going to be faced. There's a lot of things that are still up in the air. A lot of you know change is happening again with the season, and who knows how long this iteration lasts.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but there are still, like you mentioned, Tommy, there's still some things out there. Like this could be fun to watch. We're going to have in-person events, for the semifinals or for qualifying. I guess they're calling it in-person semifinals. There'll be online semifinals. The open, whether you do it or not, I would encourage everybody to at least participate in some way, shape, or form at your local affiliate, whether that's just
Mhm.
going and judging, whether that's trying to be part of Friday Night Lights, because that really is where the best experiences are in the open. Like that hyper local experience never, to me, has never disappointed. Like I've always enjoyed being part of that, whether it's I dropped into the gym and saw what they were doing, or being part of it at NC Fit. Like it's,
Yeah.
even if you're like, I don't know if I want to pay the money, just go to your affiliate and support them. At least do that.
Mhm.
So,
For sure.
okay. Well, that brings us to our PR and no rep for the year. I've already said, we'll start with a no rep for the year, I guess, because we'll end on the positive. I mean, everybody, obviously the thing is the death of Lazar Djukic. Now that's the worst thing that could have happened. But aside from that, what do you think the one, like, just like the big miss was last year that you
Well,
want to see fixed this year?
I mean, I want to preface this because I don't think it should be overlooked. My honestly biggest no rep wasn't necessarily, sounds weird. How do I put this respectfully? My biggest no rep wasn't going to be his death, but it was going to be how CrossFit responded to it.
I think
And
that's fair.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying,
uh,
which I probably would land in the same.
because
This,
ultimately, like, sure, that people, regardless of the severity of the mistakes will be made, people will mess up, bad things will happen,
mm,
but how you respond to them and the transparency and honesty and integrity with which you carry yourself afterwards speaks volumes. And the quote unquote lie and dishonesty about the blessing from his family, to me, it was the biggest no rep of the year.
yeah,
The deception on that part, because that paints that entire, a lot. I think everyone in that arena and most of the people on the sideline, once they believed that the family had given the blessing, and Luca had given the blessing to continue, I think that made the weekend palatable, at least to try and continue in his honor. And I don't think that would have been the case had it been known.
yeah.
So
No,
that
I
that
think well said.
I want to make sure that's not like, we don't gloss that over.
No, and
But
I'm not. I didn't
um
want to. I was just, yeah. And you handled that the way I thought you would.
mhm.
Losing a competitor is horrible. Like it
Yeah.
was awful, and I think everyone would universally agree that. I was just trying to say, like, other than that,
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously a horrible thing, and I think
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. The reaction to it, I think, was underwhelming for a lot of people, and it would, I've talked to people inside of CrossFit who have said, they wanted some answers too. They wanted to know what was going on,
Yeah, 100%.
what
That
happened, and and that may. I get the legal ramifications of all this, and there's still all that out there, and why you
Yeah,
can't do that. But I am hopeful that one day everyone's able to look and see, okay, here's what happened. Like this is exactly what happened, and this is why.
yeah, yeah. I would say my biggest no rep, we kinda touched on it, was the my biggest no rep of the year was the golden barbell.
Yeah, Lauren,
And the all the athletes doing a EMOM with the barbell and
that
staring
was,
at it. It's
yep.
like you're trying to hype up this new exciting competition, and you don't show the first one live, and then the second one,
I'm with you on that
everyone mails it in. I was like, "This," I mean, this had the excitement of a wet fart.
one, which can be
Like,
pretty exciting
I mean, they can.
if you're on the receiving end of one in the wrong way, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh man, Lauren, how about you?
Oh, man, those I would second all of those,
Yeah,
but outside of those as the biggest no rep, I think putting systems in place that set you up for failure, example, the step up and having that as the only video that you're gonna
Mm.
judge.
all right.
Don't set yourself up for failure, just don't.
I'm with you on the golden barbell thing. That just had, I was like, what? Yeah, and I remember at that announcement just lightly, I don't say lightly, but just sort of saying, "Hey, what if we did this instead?" And just getting some looks from the people who were in charge, like, "No, we're not doing it that way." And I was like, "Oh." okay, and then pushing back a little bit more, and then yeah, they just weren't having it. All right, PR. I already said mine. Mine was the Rogue Invitational. I just top to bottom, it was such an awesome experience, even though I literally went from like the airport to the hotel venue, airport, out. I didn't see anything other than the competition, but I freaking loved it, and I thought it was amazing. That's my PR.
Mine had to be SoCal.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It was after a very, very, very gloomy couple of months before that and everything that happened. It was a nice, like, little sparkle that you could see and a little glimmer in the athlete's eyes and
Yeah.
coworkers' eyes and the community
And you got the road trip, you know?
Yeah.
and I got a really cool road trip out of it.
Got to have
And
blue
I
bottle
got
coffee.
homemade enchiladas at the Marquez residence.
Mm.
You took me to the good coffee place. We got good burgers. So also my palate was really happy with that trip. So
Tommy, PR.
big
Yep.
PR.
I mean, I'll preface this. The only PR that really matters for me this year is the birth of my son.
There you go. That's the right answer.
So my wife gets that PR because let's be honest, I was a cheerleader in that regard. And she was throwing for 440 and 4 touchdowns.
You were just holding the clipboard on the sideline.
And just dragging defenders across the goal
Yep.
line. But I would say if I had to pick one related to this season, it would be Luka winning Dubai.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a good one.
I can't even
That's a
imagine.
good one. That's a
I
good
can't
one
even
for me.
imagine the emotional turmoil, whatever you want to call it, that goes into stepping back and onto that competition floor for the first time, and then to be able to be successful at the highest level in doing that is tremendous.
Yeah,
and it added a nice feel good moment to end his year, despite all the sadness, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good way to end. All right, that's our year in review. If you're watching this, put in the comments like kind of what you thought your highlights and lowlights were. I'd love to hear what people say, and I'm sure there's something like, oh, I totally forgot about that, because there always is.
100%.
And it was a crazy year in 2024, and hopefully we can, whatever this new year is going to be as far as the season and what it's going to look like, hopefully we can move forward and get this thing back on track and enjoy the competition side of it again. Because I feel like now we're finally at a point where we're ready to do that. But obviously there are still a lot of externalities that might affect that, and we're going to continue to talk to people who are involved in that. One of the reasons why this show is a little late is because we had that interview. Tommy and Lauren had that interview with the crew from the World Fitness Project, and we'll have more coming from them, more from the PFAA, probably more from CrossFit as well. So there's a lot to stay tuned for in 2025. And of course, Wodapalooza Miami is on the horizon. Thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to Thirdzy, thirdzy.com/TEF. You'll save 20%. You'll improve your sleep and your recovery. And remember, firstform.com/TEF to shop their entire line of delicious supplements. Those the apple maple bars, just
the apple crisp ones.
Man,
I watched you inhale an entire box of those at the Legends Championship.
He was not sharing with anyone.
You gotta go try. It's having trouble talking between bites. So check them out as well. Thanks guys for listening. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope 2025 brings us a much better time than at least the back half of 2024 did. That is it for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For Lauren Khalil and Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other. Be better. And we'll talk to you guys next time.